Good morning, everybody. We are doing another live stream here on YouTube where you can submit questions and join the discussion. We typically meet on the four regularly scheduled meetings each month, and we meet like on the first Saturday of every month, first Sunday of every month in different places around California. And because of the stay at home order, if you would call it, we've decided to switch this to online. And what we do when we typically get together is I read out loud the email that I send out once a month, and then we have a discussion about it. We try to figure out how to apply some of what we learn into our daily lives. And so I welcome you to join in, and please submit your questions, and that's how we are going to interact. This is live on YouTube and on Instagram, so you can join in from wherever you are in the world and submit your questions. Of course, considering everything that's going on, the topics tend to now be about remaining calm. So thank you guys for being here. Those of us who don't work in the medical, emergency, law enforcement, or public service sectors are staying home to stop the spread of this virus. Some people are enhancing this newfound solitude as an opportunity for introspection and contemplation, while others are climbing the walls. They are riding their emotional roller coasters from happy to crappy and back again. Most of us are accustomed to routine, schedule, and staying busy. So when we were advised to shelter in place, many people didn't know what to do with themselves. It reminded me of my first day at the Japanese monastery. We were shown to our meditation cushion in the zendo. Everyone sat down facing the wall. The bells chimed, and that was it. We were not given any instructions on what to do. There was no visible timer on the wall counting down the minutes. You know, it was a lot to handle. We just sat there in silence and waited for something to happen. And many who've never tried meditating before found this lack of activity extremely difficult to handle. Because we are typically surrounded by physical, visual, and auditory stimuli, then it can be a little jarring when everything suddenly stops. But if you've ever meditated before, then you know that the moment you turn off the external, it's not that everything stops. That's when the real work begins, because then you can finally get in touch with what's going on internally. And maybe that's why this practice is so foreign and scary to so many people at first. And the hardest thing for people to see is themselves. So we have people tuned in from Chicago and Norway and everywhere, in London and Nevada, on Instagram and on YouTube. I'm just going to keep reading that, after we stare at that blank wall for a few hours each day, week after week, that wall became a mirror. It started reflecting back to me everything about myself that I'd been ignoring or hiding since childhood. Even stuff that I thought I'd already worked through and dealt with resurfaced, so I can reevaluate my personal responsibility for how my life has turned out and figure out whose voice was in my head judging my every move. And I finally had to ask myself why I do what I do. I think that's something that we rarely ask. We figure it out. We know what to do. We know what to do next. We have goals and dreams and missions. But we rarely ask ourselves why. Like, where did we pick that up? And that's what I started asking myself. And it empowered me to steer my life in a new direction, more consciously aware of that internal voice now that I've quieted everything else enough to finally hear it. And I think that's where we are. So to combat the silence in our current quarantine, many people have unfortunately doubled down on the amount of news that they watch, which immediately backfired, and it sparked panic and anxiety disorders if you didn't already have them. My friend Shelly told me that she's been listening to too much news, drama, and people complaining. So she was looking for some positive vibes. But I think that increasing good vibrations without reducing our exposure to negativity wouldn't necessarily solve the problem. It might just make the highs higher and the lows even lower. So many of you are asking on how to remain calm during all this and all that, and I will get to that, I promise. But I want to answer Shelly's question first. Like increasing the good vibrations, if you don't reduce the negative ones, it's not going to solve the problem. So I say eliminate your exposure to sensational hysteria altogether so that rationale and composure has room to settle. You have to make room for it. So I'm not suggesting sticking our head in the sand or wearing rose-tinted glasses. I only suggest that we zoom out to see the big picture and that we remember that nothing is ever all bad or all good. Everything is always perfectly balanced somewhere in between. So I know that when my own perspective dips a little too heavily on the dark side of doom, for example, then I know that I myself am out of balance. Do you see that? It's not I'm looking at the world and I look at the world's out of balance. The world is balanced. The world has always managed to maintain its balance. And perhaps what's happening right now is the Earth's way of doing exactly that. So when I feel out of balance, then I know I'm the one who's out of balance. And the benefit of that is I can do something about this. I can't fix the world, but I can do this. So I hope that makes sense, because the invitation is for each of us to find our calm center, and not just find it, but remember where it is so you can bring yourself back to it whenever you veer off track. Then Shelley said that even if she limits her exposure to the news to maybe twice a day or for only 15 minutes or whatnot, whatever your practice is, then she still has a hard time keeping her emotions in check when it comes to the choices that politicians and leaders are making. She gets very upset by the injustices when decisions are made that impact other people's lives. So, okay, I get it. We're watching the news. We get very upset when politicians or leaders or anyone does something that upsets us. It could even be someone in our family, and we get very, very upset. Our boss, our workers, our neighbors, our landlords, we get very upset. So, when I get triggered like that, when I'm watching the news and I get so upset by what governments are doing or what countries are doing, I chuckle at my own arrogant thinking that I still pretend to know what's best, or like I know how to run a country out of an epidemic or any kind of political, global, national, or even local challenges. Heck, we are all still struggling to calm our internal struggles. So clearly, I'm in no position to even have an opinion about what's going on in the Middle East, for example. I remind myself that the only thing I know for certain is that I don't know anything for certain. Do you have any idea how liberating that is? I hold the few opinions that I have very lightly, and I reserve room to honor the fact that the opposite perspective is just as true to somebody else somewhere else because of their time, place, or circumstance. So many of you are asking, how do I remain calm? How do I keep this from bubbling over? This is a very good way to do that. Is by remembering everyone is trying to figure out the best way to have the most fulfilling life possible. So when you're wondering why is so-and-so doing what they're doing, it's because they think that's what's going to lead to their happiness. They're doing it for the same reasons you're doing what you're doing. So, this is live on YouTube and on Instagram. And if you're sitting there, in self-isolation goes hand in hand with personal growth. I posted online that one word can change your entire attitude. You're not stuck at home. You're safe at home, meaning you're safe from the virus, not necessarily in a safe environment. Many of us have challenging home environments to deal with, but you're safe from the virus in the sense that one cough can change your life. So change your language around, I'm stuck at home, to I'm safe at home. This is for my own benefit. Because and it's not, I take that back. It's not even for my own benefit. It's for the benefit of everyone else. Like, I'm not worried about myself dying of this virus. I stay home to avoid spreading it or infecting other people. I could still have it, even though I don't have any symptoms. And so choosing not to endanger other people to me is as logical as stopping at a red light to avoid a collision. If people are getting so upset, well, I don't want the government telling me what to do. The government is always telling you what is in your best interest and what to do. They're telling you, oh, stop at the stop sign, stop at the red light, stick to the speed limit. Now, yes, you may go faster than than you're advised to, but yes, you're putting your own life and somebody else's life in danger. And yes, some people are comfortable driving 100 miles per hour on the freeway, and some people are perfectly comfortable coughing on strangers. So we can't tell other people what to do. You can't. You're never going to be able to control everyone. But what you can do is say, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to drive the speed limit. I'm going to stay on the right side. I'm going to stay home until this blows over, until there's a vaccine, until there's a cure. Then I don't mind what other people are doing. I don't know if that makes any sense. So many people are trying to control other people, and you can't. You never have been able to, and you never will be able to. So, we've only lost the illusion of stability and a false sense of security and control. We never had it. So when people say, oh, these are challenging times or these are uncertain times, we've always lived in uncertain times. This is nothing new. So I'm going to get to your questions in a minute. I just want to wrap up that we are actually waking up to the reality and the beauty of uncertainty and impermanence, so we can come out of this more appreciative and grateful than ever before. This is apparently what it's going to take. If we haven't learned yet, then maybe we will now. But if anxiety has taught me anything over the years, it's that panic never makes anything easier. So I say keep calm, and that's all. Just keep calm. I am grateful for all the medical professionals out there and people still going to work. They're putting their lives at risk to care for others. Now, because of all of our meetings have been canceled, then we're switching to this live stream. So my invitation, I'm going to answer your questions. It's to smile and put your chin up, okay? Use this time to go inward, to reflect, like we did at the monastery when we had quote unquote nothing to do but stare at the wall and work through what's going on internally. Use this time to do that. Those of you who have just logged in and said you missed the beginning, this is live on YouTube. And when the live feed is done, after an hour of processing or whatnot, it's going to be available to review from the beginning. So don't worry about missing any of this. You can tune in at any time and watch this on YouTube through the Buddhist Bootcamp YouTube channel. I'm going to scroll back here and look at all your questions and see what we've got. Thank you guys for being patient. We've got people from Florida, Wisconsin, Norway, London, Belgium, Denver, Seattle, Gilroy, California, Northern California, New Jersey, London. Let's see here. Iowa, New Orleans. Carrie asks, how do you find that calm center? If you've ever tried to tell someone who is stressed out to relax, you know it doesn't work. Because especially if they have no reference point of what relaxed looks like. So this is definitely an invitation for us to think back to a time in your life when you were calm, when you were relaxed, despite of what's going on around you. Because it's not about getting to a place where you eliminate stress in your life and nobody's pushing your buttons. It's getting to a place where you don't have any buttons that can be pushed. So we've all gone through life during various stages of people pushing various buttons, and yet we have been able to remain calm. We have been able to find our calm center and get ourselves back there, to find joy in the midst of chaos. We've been able to do that. So I'm not asking you, Carrie and everyone else, to do something you've never done before. You've done this before. The invitation is, first of all, to feel empowered and the strength that if you've done it before, you can do it again. And to remember, think back to what worked then. It'll work now. Whether it be deep breathing, someone says breathe, or yoga, or just remembering that this is temporary. For me, that's enough. That usually does the trick. I tell myself, this will pass, and it will. So I guess to answer your question, Carrie, and everyone else who says, how do you remain calm? How do you find your calm center? The first question to ask yourself is, why am I not calm in the first place? So that's my question for you. When you answer that, then we'll be able to deal with it. But when we let outside circumstances destroy our inner peace, then we are at the whim of outside circumstances. But when we work on our inner peace, then it doesn't matter what's going on outside of us. So that's the real question. Why are you not calm? Hold opinions lightly. I love that. Thank you. I'm glad that works. Is whatever opinion you have, if whatever it is that makes you angry or white knuckled, that's an invitation. This is what you need to work on. That's what you're holding on to too tightly. Let go, or just loosen your grip at least, and you will feel immediate release of tension. Kim asked, "Ooh, sorry, I have lost. What words can you provide those healthcare workers on the front line with how to remain calm when they truly are in the eye of the storm? It's easier for me being able to stay home." I can't imagine a healthcare worker who is not always at risk, who is not always in the eye of the storm. It's what advice would I give to soldiers in the military, doing exactly what they signed up to do. This is your call to rise. This is your call to do the work, not just begrudgingly, but with a smile on your face. This is your call. And yes, take all precautions possible. And I'm so grateful, hopeful at least, that you're the first to get tested should you need it if you start showing any symptoms. And better than anyone that should you notice the symptoms early on, should you get treatment early on, this is not a death sentence. You might get sick and then you might get to stay home, which is what you're looking to do. Or you can get through this. I'm sure you guys are in the front lines. You guys are, if anyone was going to be given a life vest, are the ones who are going to be shot at. So as soon as there's a vaccine, as soon as there's some way to protect us, you will be the first to get it. So I appreciate you guys at some point in your life saying, yes, I'm aware of the risks and I want to do this job. I don't know why doctors and nurses don't wear capes. You guys are superheroes. So I appreciate you. In the same way, when I'm driving down the road and it's raining and it's cold or snowing or 112 degrees out, whatever it is, and I'm watching people doing construction work, and I'm just like, thank you so much for signing up to do that, rain or shine. Farmers picking our fruits and vegetables regardless of weather. I appreciate you guys so much. We are all in whatever field of work we're in. We're in the front line of some danger. That's what I want us to eliminate, is this illusion that we've never been facing danger before, that this is new. This is a new form of danger, but it's nothing new. Okay, so get that idea of like perhaps woe is me out of your head. It's superwoman is me, if you would. And I hope that helps and doesn't aggravate you any further. But you are doing, I'm tempted to say, God's work, so to speak. So someone asked, what part faith and being in the moment in the whole current worldly scenario? Oh, what play does faith and being? I'm confused by the question. Perhaps what part does faith play? Being faith, it plays a role in everyday life when to answer even the earlier question, how to remain calm, is you trust that everything is working out the way it's supposed to, not the way you think it should, not but I have faith that not even that we'll make it through this. If we don't need to make it through this, if us not making it through this, it's what's best, then we won't. Like I'm not attached to any outcome, to any end result, because that would imply that I know what's best. That would imply that I have some ego surrounding around, well, we must survive or we must make it through. It's like, according to whom? Well, according to my ego, of course. So I've got to let go of this idea that my opinion, that my truth is universal. It isn't. I have no, there's nothing I hold on to tightly. I don't know How else to explain that? Someone said, thank you, Timber and everyone, for the togetherness. Hello from San Francisco. Aloha. We've got Canada. We've got Quebec, Canada, and Ottawa, Canada, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. So, yes, this is you guys' show. I'm going to try to look up questions on, let me see. I'll scroll up on, I don't know if I can, on Instagram. Because, okay, so we're live on both YouTube and Instagram. And there are hundreds of you. So I'm trying to keep up with the questions and the comments. And I love that you guys are here, and I appreciate your patience while I try to figure this out. It's so normally when we meet in person and we sit in a circle, some of you know this, then only one person gets to talk at a time. This is so new to me, and it's so different because everyone talks at the same time. Someone asked, what about hope, though? Hoping we will get through it. Okay, Jill. I want to say something that might sound counterintuitive at first, but it's the line from Fight Club that took me the longest to process, to understand, to make peace with. Okay? And so all of you, Asheville, South Africa, everyone who's tuned in from everywhere in the world, to answer your question, Jill, what about hope? The line that I'm talking about is the one that says, losing all hope is freedom. And it took me a while to understand, but what he meant by that is that hope is so self-centered. It is so egotistical, and it is based on your own personal viewpoint of what you think is best. It's no different than say, oh, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow because I have a picnic. Well, the farmer hopes it does rain tomorrow because it waters his fields. The snow skier hopes that it rains here because that means it snows up in the mountains, and then he gets a whole lot of fresh powder to go skiing on. So hope, whatever you're hoping for, someone somewhere else is hoping for the exact opposite. And so recognizing that hope, that losing hope is the greatest freedom we can have, because we are completely then detached from our own ego and self-centered ultimate truth that we think is applicable to everyone, and it's so liberating to let that go. So I don't promote hope, that what you think is best is what's going to happen. I'm suggesting having faith that what happens is what's best, that this needs to happen for reasons far beyond our comprehension. That's faith. It's kind of the opposite of hope. I don't know if that makes any sense. But faith means that even if something terrible happens in my life, something that I'm inclined to label as horrible, bad, tragic, so many times in my life have the things that I thought were bad, that were horrible, things that I didn't want, things that I would have done anything to avoid, have turned out to be the best things in my life. So much so that I'm actually grateful so many of the things that I used to hope for didn't come true. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know what was best. I hoped for something and it didn't happen. So I'm grateful some of the things I used to hope for didn't come true. So abandon hope, embrace faith. And the benefit of faith is that, people want to know what to do with their fear. And that's, when you feed your faith, all your fears starve to death. But when you feed your fears, your faith goes away. So it's kind of like me asking, when I go and I speak at churches regularly, I often ask the entire congregation, I said, how many of you believe in God? And all of them raise their hand. And then I say, well, how many of you worry? And they all raise their hand. And I'm like, you can't do both. If you believe in God, if you have faith, then there's nothing to worry about. If you worry, you're second guessing the very thing you say you believe in. Do you see that? So some of you are getting it and you're saying, yes, this is great. And this is a wonderful perspective. And so I'm hoping that this is resonating. And if it's not, then then this may not be your truth. Like I said, in both books, in Buddhist Boot Camp, Faithfully, the opposite of what you know is also true. So someone else believes that hope is the greatest thing we can have right now. No shade thrown at you, Obama, with your hope campaign. I get what you were aiming at, and it works. But in this context, I hope you get where I'm going. It's to live in the moment and to be present and to trust that what is unfolding is precisely what needs to unfold for reasons far beyond my limited comprehension. Recognizing my comprehension, my understanding, my level of wrapping my mind around the earth, the globe, the universe is so freaking limited. There's no way I can look through a peephole and see a tiny percentage of what's going on in the world and somehow claim to know what's best. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I'm laughing because that's kind of like a natural response to me. I'm feeling so overwhelmed with all of your questions. I don't know what to do with them. I need like an assistant to go through and like filter through the questions and just send me the ones I need to address rather than everyone. And I appreciate you saying hello from everywhere you are. It's just sorting through it to find your questions is humorous. So perhaps this is an opportunity for all of us to practice patience while I go through and find your questions. When you're at your lowest, Mark said, especially with this added on top of the everyday stresses and things like dying family, and everything seems frantic and helpless, how do you slow down besides sitting? So I believe, Mark, that we can be in the middle of a stressful situation and choose not to be stressed. We can be in a frustrating situation and choose not to be frustrated. It's not about avoiding annoying people. It's getting to a place where you don't get annoyed, and then you'll still always be surrounded by annoying people in frustrating situations, but you'll get to a place where you don't get annoyed or frustrated. How do you get there? First and foremost, by acknowledging, realizing, embracing, and then celebrating the fact that we choose how we feel, guys. The moment you say, I can't help the way I feel, or worse yet, we put the blame on someone else and we say, you make me feel ... We are taking our feelings, our emotions, our responsibility, our power, and we're giving it to someone else and saying, I'm at your whim. You can do something and I'll get frustrated. You can do something and I get stressed. This can happen and all of a sudden I break down. That is so disempowering. That is the opposite of recognizing that we have power. Now, I've shared this with many of you guys so many times before, but perhaps for those of you who've never heard it, and because it ties in so well to answering your question, Mark, I want to remind you of that time where I was sitting in a large hall and we were guided through a meditation where we were all asked to think about a sad time in our lives. Who was with you. And again, to use your examples, when someone close to you dies, when your marriage falls apart, when your dog runs away, and we were all asked to sit there and think back to the time, place, and circumstance. What were we wearing? Who was with us? All of that, all at the same time. We were asked to think back to that time in our lives, and you can see from the back of the room, as we were starting to think back to that time, all of our postures started slouching. Some people started tearing. Some people started crying. They started feeling all of those feelings again. Nothing has changed as far as our circumstance goes. We were still just sitting in a meditation hall, but people were crying their eyes out and they were sobbing and they were feeling the pain as if it was happening right now. Then we were asked to think of the happiest time of our lives. And that could be your surprise birthday party, or it could be the divorce you went through, or whatever happy memory. It could be your wedding day. It could be the day you got your puppy. And when we were thinking of those times in our lives, our postures straightened up and we started smiling and giggling to ourselves. Now, again, nothing has changed in the outside circumstance, but through the power of our thought, we were able to control how we felt. We just took ourselves from crying to giggling. And the power of that exercise is that we were in complete charge of how we were feeling. So to answer your question, it's a very long answer, Mark. I apologize, but what can we do is we can remember that someone can say something offensive to me, but then I have a choice of whether to be offended or not. Do you see that? That's taking my power back. So in the same vein, I could be in a frustrating situation and I can choose not to get stressed. So what do I do in that sense? Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't get angry or upset or frustrated. I'm human. Of course I do. But what do I do when that happens? I remind myself immediately, okay, I'm feeling anger right now. Why am I choosing anger? There are 4,000 other feelings I can choose. Why am I choosing this one? So that's why I said in the beginning that the first step is the realization, the embrace, the celebration of the fact that I choose how I feel. And today I choose to feel calm and happy. Now, when I get angry, I think the words with which we describe our situation are very powerful. So instead of saying, I am angry, which has to do with my identity, saying I am angry, this is who I am, and because I say that, then I'm looking at the world through the lens of anger. I instead say, I'm feeling anger right now. That way, I'm honoring the feeling and I'm honoring how temporary it is. By saying I'm feeling angry right now, I'm reassuring myself it's only right now. This will pass. So I hope that answers your question, and also Beverly's. Let me see. I keep getting frustrated, feeling that I want to do something more worthwhile than my job, which suddenly feels so insignificant now, especially as I am now doing it whilst in my kitchen table. Beverly, we are all contributing in so many ways. And I've often said, when people want to go fight for something or they want to whatnot, and it's like, sometimes sitting at home and drinking a cup of tea on your stoop or in your kitchen table is the most peaceful thing that you can do. Fair trade tea, of course, but then you're part of the solution simply by not being part of the pollution. And never before has this been more true. What can you do? Stay home. That, you know what? That makes you a superhero. I think that's phenomenal. It's as I said in the email that I send out, that I read in the beginning of this, in case you just tuned in. I send out one email every month. It's on the first of every month, and then it becomes a podcast episode of Hawkeye. If you still want to read it, it's available on BuddhistBootcamp.com under blog. You can read it yourself, or you can wait for me to record it as a podcast episode, listen to it, or whatnot. But what I was saying is that staying at home right now is the same as driving down the freeway or driving down the road and you get to a stop sign or a stoplight and stopping. You're stopping because you don't want to injure anyone else and you don't want to hurt yourself. You're following the rules mandated by an intention to keep everyone safe. And so that's what we're doing. What you're doing, regardless of whatever your job is, Beverly, it's obviously significant enough, or you would have just been laid off. And even if you were laid off, doesn't mean that you're not significant. Sometimes, like restaurants have to let some people go because no one's coming to the restaurants anymore and suppliers can't supply. So there is nothing in the world outside of you that will give you your sense of self-worth. It has to come from within you. And if you woke up this morning, you have a purpose. Okay? The mere fact that you're alive, that you're awake, that you're here says you are here for a reason. And it may not be for your own benefit. Maybe you're there for the benefit of someone else by leading by example, or by you don't even need to know. Like, that's just it. I don't need to know that someone somewhere benefited from me sharing a message that benefited me. I just throw it out there, and if it helps them, great. But I don't need the outside validation to feel good about my life. The validation comes from here. Maybe we're back to faith. Really long answers, guys. I apologize. Let me see what other questions you have. Love your teachings. Catherine said, have started listening to them on Sunday mornings as opposed to going to church, and I've received so much motivation. Thank you. So, Catherine, a couple of things. You said, I love your teachings. One thing, I want to acknowledge that these are not my teachings. This is ancient wisdom that I'm simply translating to a language that people today can understand. So they're not mine. And I don't take any ownership of them. I I can't imagine receiving the benefits from them that I have and not sharing it with others. I think that's how I express my gratitude. It's kind of like if you were born with a gift or a talent, the way to say thank you for that is to share it with the world. Not for personal gain, but to enrich the lives of others in the same way your life has been enriched. So I want to touch on that it's not my teachings, but thank you. Maybe my translations of the teachings, if that works for you, the 5-minute podcast episodes, the Sunday sermons, if you would. I'm glad they're resonating with you. And even more, I'm really glad that you called it motivation rather than inspiration. I've said before that inspiration is practically entertainment, whereas motivation actually changes our behavior. And we're here to talk about behavior modification. We hear about how can I change the way I am so I can live at peace with the world. And I believe this is how we do that. So I'm going to scroll up for more of your questions. Someone else, many of you are saying thank you, so you're welcome. Someone, Ursula Walter, said it's scary because when I'm self-reflecting too much, you can easily fall into a hole. I understand that when you reflect on your own personal responsibility for the way your life has turned out, you can fall into a hole of, oh my God, I did this to myself. And then you start beating yourself up and you start feeling guilty and horrible about that. However, the moment you realize I am responsible for the way my life has turned out, that's exactly the moment you realize then I'm responsible for the way it's going to turn out from this point forward. That means I'm in control. Like I have my hands on the steering wheel. I can turn off the cruise control that I set at some point, or many of us have had the cruise control set by someone else, by our parents, preachers, teachers. At some point in our lives, they said, this is where you're going. This is your lane. This is where you're headed. You're going to get in that car and it's not even often not even a car. You are on a train with a bunch of other people all headed to college and then work and then back home and then work and then back home and then death. Like that's your path. And you're like, that's depressing. But the moment you realize I don't have to stay on this train, I can choose a different path. I have choices. And there's a chapter in Buddhist Boot Camp where I say we're only the victims of our own choices. And that is not like victim blaming. It's empowering for us to make different choices. I hope at least it came across that way. I hope some of you have read the books. If you haven't, please do. You have nothing else to do right now. Get the books. If you get them from BuddhistBootcamp.com, another copy of the book will be donated to the Prison Library Project. So that's my one pitch for you guys. Get the books and be part of the solution. I'm going to scroll up again. Sorry, I'm going to use my left hand so I'm not blocking the camera on YouTube. Again, this is live on YouTube and on Instagram, which is so new for me. I've never done this before. Time for sitting in silence and reflection. Switzerland, Pennsylvania, Denver. Wow, you guys are from everywhere. I love it. This is the benefit of doing this as a live stream, is when we meet in California, or I was supposed to be in Missouri a couple of weeks ago, but it was to speak at a university. But of course, the university switched to all online courses. So my flight was canceled. My talk was, I don't want to say canceled. From what I understand, it was postponed. So always keep an eye out on the upcoming events list, because I fly everywhere on this. The second half of every month is reserved for out-of-state speaking engagements. So I may see you soon. In fact, where I go is directly related to where I'm invited. I can't go where I'm not invited. And often it's you guys who go to your local Unity Church or Center for Spiritual Living or Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, or if you're a teacher and you want to invite me to speak with your class or university or corporation, or a lot of my talks are in prisons. You guys make it possible. You reach out, you say, hey, we want you to speak here, 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 and here. I don't charge for my talks. It's just a matter of getting me there. And before you know it, I'm sitting in a circle with anywhere between 10 and 100 of you at anywhere from a yoga studio to a convention center, and sharing this, uh, essentially holding each other's hand as we get through this. So it's all in your hands. So thank you, Nancy. I appreciate you saying that this is a gift for us. All right, I'm scrolling up here on your question. Oh, interesting. There, let's see what. Oh, sorry. Instagram is probably not very friendly, as far as questions, um, as far as being able to toggle out the, at least, unless I don't know how to use this, which is very possible. There's probably an easier way to do this, and I don't know what it is. But hello from Switzerland and Sweden. Um, God, you guys are tuning in from everywhere, even people from down the street. I apologize. Thank you guys for being patient. How to contribute to the present moment? Shall we wait and see? Well, first, don't add to the panic. I think oftentimes we're like, how can I add more on top of this? And it's like, hold up, don't add bad. That in itself is helping. So that alone. And then when you are invited, for example, and this is not intended to in the sense of bragging in any way, but this is just setting an example. There is a local farmers market nearby that has offered the option to do a curbside pickup where you pay them in advance. I think it's like $10 through Venmo, and then you pull up and they take a box of it's $13. They take a box of produce, and it's got oranges and beets and broccoli and salad greens, whatever they've got. They take that, put it in your car, and you drive away. And so I've been doing that for a couple of weeks, and it just occurred to me, a little too late, but maybe not, to make the announcement at local churches that if anyone, especially the elderly, would like a box of produce delivered to them, I'm going there to pick up my box anyway. I'll pick up as many as people need, and all I have to do is send them a notification in advance saying, hey, I need this number of boxes, and I can do that. So to answer your question, how can we help? That's how we can help. Reach out, find out, what do people need? They don't need more stress. They don't need more panic. They need a helping hand. And don't assume you know what that looks like. Don't assume that you know how to help. Ask how you can help. Someone said, I'm actually grateful for this time of self-reflection. It makes me feel guilty for this when so many are suffering right now. Could you touch on gratitude and its importance? Of course. It's grateful people who are happy, not happy people who are grateful. And I truly believe that in every situation and circumstance, there is something for us to be grateful for. And it's our responsibility to, when I'm trying to visually articulate what happens inside my head. So, as I mentioned before, keeping a balance and keeping calm, it's kind of like this pendulum, and I'm like in the middle. And so when I feel myself stirring more in the direction of doom or worry or concern or anger, that to me immediately indicates, hey, I've veered too far away from gratitude. And the moment I go to gratitude, all of those other things go away. So that's the importance of gratitude. It is an antidote to all the negative weight that we're carrying. It takes the weight off our back. And that's all true. Earlier, to the woman who said that she's a nurse and she's torn because she's really grateful to be in the front lines, but also scared. And it's possible to hold both of those and hold them very lightly, and embrace the role we each play, including the woman just drinking tea in her kitchen. Houston, I apologize. I'm trying to find your questions. The live talk is on YouTube and on Instagram. And let's see, Ontario, Canada. We have a forest hermitage here too. Nice. Would love to come to your forest hermitage when it's warm. I don't do cold. I just want to say thank you to Red Buddhist Bootcamp a few years ago, and it changed my life. Thank you. I hope you passed it on to someone else. Don't keep the book, people. Give it to someone else. Indonesia. Wow, you guys are tuning in from everywhere. That's so incredible. And Ireland, Alabama. Thank you for publishing the books. We'd love to host you in Savannah, Georgia. I've been to Savannah. I don't remember where, but I know I have. It was beautiful. Oh, and then there's Michelle from Osos. So, hi, Michelle. Some of you are not far. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate your presence and your embracing. Aloha, Aaron, in Seattle. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's been about 45 minutes, and I believe it's a great opportunity for us to answer Johnny questions. How do you stay positive when our roommates and coworkers are constantly negative? They are serving a purpose as well. They remind me how not to be. I witness people who are freaking out and panic and negative, and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not choosing that. So, that they're serving a purpose. And I'm grateful because you know how I said earlier that we're all leading by example. Well, we're either showing people how to be or how not to be. And I think that that's a really great way to look at everyone as your teacher. The last question I will answer today, someone said, what type of meditation do you recommend for someone who is new to meditation? Will, especially since you are new to meditation, the only thing I'm going to suggest is be wary of anyone who tells you there is only one way to meditate or that there's a right way to meditate. The biggest concern I hear from people when they're trying to meditate for the first time is, I can't do it, or I'm doing it wrong, or I tried and I failed. And the only reason people feel like they're doing it wrong is because at some point, somewhere along the way, someone told them that there's a right way to do it, implying there's a wrong way to do it. And if you're not sitting cross-legged or with your eyes half open, or if you're not counting your breaths, or if you're not in full lotus, or whatever it is, if you're not doing that, then you're doing it wrong. And that's just so silly because, the concept of meditating, and people say, well, I can control my thoughts. Well, the point of meditation is not to control your thoughts. It's to not let your thoughts control you. To bring awareness to what we're talking about, to witness, to sit there and go, wow, I was trying to focus on this mantra or on my breath or whatever it is you're choosing to focus on a piece of art. And my mind just started wondering about what to have for lunch. And then you caught yourself and you brought your mind back to what you wanted to focus on. That is you training your mind to do what you want it to do rather than what it wants to do. And if in a 5-minute meditation, your mind wanders 100 times and you caught it 100 times and brought it back 100 times, that is a successful meditation. That means you did exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't mean you failed. That means you succeeded 100 times. Congratulations. So the only thing is, avoid thinking there's only one way to do it. Meditation can be while you're running, while you're gardening, while you're doing art. It could be while you're sitting still. It doesn't have to look one way. Whatever it is you do, where while you're doing it, your mind doesn't wander, you're doing it right. I've shared on BuddhistBootcamp.com, you can go, there's a Mindful Kitchen video cast, where I share different recipes. And some of them are ridiculous. Some of them I'm peeling almonds one by one. And I enjoy it because that's my meditation. My mind doesn't wander to anywhere else while I'm doing that. I do the same thing with garbanzo beans to make really smooth hummus. Laugh if you want, but that's my meditation. So when you start out, think first, instead of trying to find something else, think first if there is already something you're doing that's meditative for you. Start there. Whether it be my mind doesn't wander when I'm focusing on, when I was a kid, man, it was building model airplanes. That was so meditative for me because my mind did not veer off. I'm not a huge fan of guided meditations, but I know that it works for some. Just find what works for you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Someone said, be sure to like this, everyone. Yes, hit the like button, the subscribe button. Believe it or not, that's how I get paid. There are so many of you who contribute through patreon.com/Buddhist Bootcamp. It's just $1 a month, and it makes a huge difference. It makes the podcast available without commercial interruptions. It helps me send free books to prisons and schools. And it's not me doing it, it's you guys. So thank you so much for being soldiers of peace in the army of love. I appreciate you. And keep an eye out for the next live stream. I will post it on the website and in my next monthly email, which will be on the first day of next month. Stay inside, everyone. Stay positive, chin up, and use humor to get through this. Don't laugh at other people, laugh at yourself. And how silly we are when we think we know what's best. Aloha.